The large meeting room on Nexus Prime was filled with the sound of alien laughter. Ambassador Velthkari, a tall creature with blue skin and 4 arms, stood at the center holding a glowing screen above his head. His voice was loud and mocking. As he spoke to the hundreds of representatives from different worlds, "Look at this nonsense," he said, pointing at the images on his screen. "Stories about humans, fairy tales for children who are afraid of the dark." The other aliens in the room nodded and chuckled. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few looked like walking trees, but they all agreed on one thing: humans were just made-up stories. Dr. Nixara, an old scientist with 6 eyes and grey tentacles instead of arms, tapped her desk with one tentacle. She had spent her whole life studying ancient civilizations, digging through old ruins and reading forgotten books. "Every species tells stories about ghost races," she explained in her slow, careful voice. "We have legends about the Starwalkers who could move through solid walls. We have tales of the ghost fleet that appears and disappears in space. Humans are just another fairy tale." The room erupted in more laughter. Some aliens slapped their desks with claws, others made clicking sounds that meant they found something. Funny. To them, the idea that a species called humans existed somewhere in the galaxy was as silly as believing in magic or monsters under the bed. But far away from that fancy meeting room, on a dusty mining planet called Kepler 442b, something strange was happening. The planet was mostly rock and metal, with huge machines digging deep holes to find valuable minerals. Workers in protective suits moved around like ants, carrying tools and checking equipment. Supervisor Kriksoth was having a normal day until he found something that shouldn't exist. He was a short, stocky alien with thick brown skin that looked like leather. His job was to check the quality of metals that the machines dug up. Most days, he found the usual stuff: iron, copper, sometimes rare crystals that were worth good money. But today was different. In his hand, he held a piece of metal that made no sense. It was smooth and warm to the touch, even though it had been buried in cold ground for who knows how long. The metal seemed to glow with a soft light that came from inside it. Strange symbols were carved into its surface. Not carved, actually, but somehow grown into the metal itself. Kriksoth had worked with metals for 30 years. He knew every type of steel, every kind of alloy that existed in the galaxy. But this was something completely new. He ran it through every test machine in his lab. The computer screens just showed error messages. The metal was stronger than diamond but lighter than aluminum. It conducted electricity in ways that broke the laws of physics. The symbols on the surface were even stranger. They looked almost like writing, but not like any language in the galactic database. Some symbols looked like they were moving when he wasn't looking directly at them. Others seemed to change color based on the light in the room. Kriksoth scratched his head with one of his 4 fingers. In all his years of mining, he had never seen anything like this. He wanted to tell someone, maybe call the science department or contact the authorities, but his boss would just tell him to get back to work. The mining company only cared about metals they could sell, not weird artifacts that didn't make sense. He did what any tired worker would do. He wrote unknown debris on his report form and put the strange metal piece in a storage box. He figured someone else could worry about it later. What he didn't know was that at that exact same moment, on 11 other planets scattered across the galaxy, other workers were finding similar strange pieces of metal with the same impossible properties and mysterious symbols. The galaxy was about to discover that some fairy tales are actually true. Captain Mordek had been patrolling the empty regions of space for 15 years, and he thought he had seen everything. His ship, the Vigilant Dawn, was old but reliable, with a crew of 12 aliens who knew how to handle trouble. They usually dealt with pirates, smugglers, or the occasional merchant ship that had broken down and needed help. But today, floating in the black emptiness of the outer terminus sector, Captain Mordek saw something that made his blood run cold. 3 ships hung motionless in space like sleeping giants. They weren't moving, weren't sending any signals, and weren't responding to his calls. At first glance, they looked like any other abandoned vessels he might find in this forgotten corner of the galaxy. Mordek was a Kajari, with dark purple skin and 2 hearts that kept his large frame powered through long shifts. His species was known for being practical and cautious, which made him perfect for patrol duty. He had learned long ago that strange things in space usually meant danger. "Run a full scan on those ships," he ordered his sensor officer, Lieutenant Vextar, a young Thraxan with excellent eyesight and quick reflexes. Vextar's 6 fingers danced across his control panel, and within minutes the results appeared on the main screen. What he saw made him blink all 4 of his eyes in confusion. "Sir, this doesn't make sense," Vextar said, his voice shaking slightly. "These ships, they're still warm. The hulls are giving off heat like someone was just living inside them." Mordek leaned forward in his captain's chair. In space, ships cooled down quickly when their power systems shut off. A warm hull meant someone had been aboard very recently, maybe within the last few hours. "Any signs of battle damage?" he asked. "None, sir. No blast marks, no hull breaches, no emergency pods launched. It's like everyone just left." Mordek studied the ships more carefully through his view screen. The more he looked, the more confused he became. These weren't like any ships he had ever seen in his career. Most galactic civilizations built their vessels big and bulky, with thick armor plating and obvious weapon systems. These 3 ships were different. They were smooth and elegant, like someone had designed them to cut through space like a knife through water. The hulls were a strange silver color that seemed to shift and change as the light from nearby stars hit them. There were no sharp edges or unnecessary parts. Everything looked purposeful, as if every curve and line had been carefully planned. Even the engines, visible through transparent sections at the rear of each ship, were unlike anything in the galactic database. "Look at those symbols on the hull," whispered Engineer Kolmarvin, an elderly Vatani who had been working on ships since before Mordek was born. Through the magnification screen, they could see markings carved into the side of each vessel. The symbols were elegant and flowing, like artwork rather than simple identification numbers. They didn't match any known language or writing system in the galactic archives. "Sir, I'm picking up some strange energy readings," Vextar reported. "The ships aren't completely dead. There's still some kind of power source running, but it's not like any reactor signature I've seen before." Mordek felt a chill run down his spine. In his experience, abandoned ships with active power sources were usually traps. Pirates sometimes used them to lure rescue ships close before attacking, but these ships felt different somehow. There was no sense of danger, no hidden weapons charging up, no movement from inside the hulls. "Prepare a boarding party," he decided. "Full environmental suits, armed but not aggressive. I want to know what happened here." The boarding party found the ships completely empty, but not in the way Mordek expected. There were no signs of struggle, no emergency evacuation, no bodies or damage. The ships were simply vacant, as if their crews had carefully packed up and left through some method that didn't involve escape pods or shuttles. The technology inside was even more puzzling than the exterior. Control panels had no buttons or switches, just smooth surfaces that seemed to respond to touch in ways that made no sense. The living quarters were designed for humanoid beings, but the proportions were slightly different from most known species. Most disturbing of all, the computer systems were still running, but completely encrypted in ways that their best technicians couldn't crack. It was as if someone had wanted them to find the ships, but not learn anything important from them. After collecting what samples they could, Mordek ordered his crew to retreat. He filed a detailed report about the discovery, but like so many strange findings from the Outer Rim, it would disappear into the vast bureaucracy of the Galactic Council, labeled as just another unexplained curiosity that wasn't worth investigating further. Admiral Corinth had seen war destroy entire star systems. He had watched planets burn and civilizations fall during his 40 years of military service. His green-scaled skin bore scars from 7 major conflicts, and his 4 arms had held weapons that could crack moons in half. But nothing in his long career had prepared him for what he was looking at now. The holographic display in his private office showed footage from the Void Sector, a region of space so empty and lifeless that most people forgot it existed. 3 dead planets floated. There worlds that had been barren rocks for millions of years. At least they used to be just rocks. Now massive structures surrounded each planet like metal spiderwebs. Space elevators stretched from the surface to orbit, their cables gleaming in the light of distant stars. Orbital platforms the size of cities hung in perfect formation around each world. Construction yards floated in the darkness, filled with partially built ships that looked like nothing the Dominion Navy had ever encountered. "Show me the time-lapse again," Corinth ordered his intelligence officer, Commander Yil Thresh, who stood nervously beside the desk. The footage began 6 months ago, showing 3 empty, dead worlds spinning slowly in space. Then, like watching a flower bloom in fast motion, the structures began to appear, not built piece by piece like normal construction, but growing organically like living things. "Sir, our engineering teams have studied this footage for weeks," Yil Thresh explained, his voice barely above a whisper. "According to everything we know about construction, these projects should have taken at least 10 years each, maybe 15, considering the complexity." Corinth's primary hands gripped the edge of his desk, while his secondary hands rubbed his temple ridges, a sign he was deeply troubled. "But they were completed in 6 months. Actually, sir, some of the smaller structures appeared to finish in just a few weeks. The materials seemed to assemble themselves. Our scientists are calling it programmable matter, substances that can reshape and rebuild according to preset instructions." The Admiral stood and walked to the large window that showed the stars beyond his flagship. His ship, the Dominion's Might, was one of the most powerful vessels in the known galaxy. Its weapons could level mountains, and its shields could withstand the explosion of small stars. But looking at the footage of those alien structures, he felt like he was commanding a toy boat in an ocean of battleships. "What about the energy signatures?" he asked. "Unknown, sir. The power sources don't match anything in our databases. The structures are generating more energy than some of our space stations, but we can't detect any fusion reactors, antimatter cores, or solar collectors." Corinth had fought against the hegemony fleet, battled pirate armadas, and even faced down ancient automated defense systems left behind by extinct civilizations. He knew what advanced technology looked like. This was something else entirely. Technology so far beyond current galactic science that it might as well be magic. Who could build something like this without us knowing? He wondered aloud. "That's the most disturbing part, sir. Our deep space sensors have been monitoring the void sector for decades. These structures appeared overnight, as if someone just turned them on." The implications made Corinth's 4 hearts beat faster. Someone with incredibly advanced technology had been operating in secret, building massive installations right under the nose of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy. Either they had cloaking technology beyond anything imaginable, or they had some other method of staying hidden that the Dominion couldn't even begin to understand. 3 days later, Corinth stood before the full Galactic Council, presenting his findings to representatives from hundreds of worlds. The footage played on enormous screens, while delegates whispered nervously among themselves. Some species had natural camouflage, others could phase through solid matter. But what they were seeing challenged the very foundations of known science. "This represents a clear threat to galactic security," Corinth declared, his voice echoing through the chamber. "We need to investigate immediately and determine who is responsible for these constructions." But Council Prime Thylara, a tall being with silver skin and glowing eyes, shook her head dismissively. "Admiral, while these images are certainly interesting, we cannot allow speculation to create panic among our citizens." "With respect, Prime, this is not speculation. These structures exist. Someone built them." "Yes, and that someone is obviously a classified military project from one of our member nations. Perhaps your own Dominion Navy, testing new construction techniques." Corinth felt his temper rise. "Prime, I can assure you that the Dominion has no such technology. None of our allies do either. Then it must be a joint project that requires security clearance beyond your level." The vote was swift and predictable. The footage would be classified, the investigation suspended, and the official position would remain that no unknown species existed in their galaxy. The structures in the void sector would be labeled as experimental construction projects, and anyone asking questions would be told they lacked proper security clearance. As Corinth left the council chambers, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were all making a terrible mistake. Trade Captain Velmark was having what he thought would be another boring day, hauling cargo between star systems. His convoy of 3 merchant ships was loaded with rare minerals from the Kepler mining. worlds heading toward the busy trade stations near Council Space. The journey usually took 12 days, and they were only halfway through when everything changed. Velmark was a Thraxian, with blue-gray skin and 4 arms that made him excellent at managing multiple ship controls at once. He had been running trade routes for 23 years, and his crew trusted him to keep them safe and profitable. His ship, the Prophet's Edge, wasn't fancy or fast, but it was reliable and well-armed enough to scare off most pirates. He was sipping his morning cup of stimulant, a bitter drink that helped him stay alert during long space flights, when his sensor officer started making alarmed clicking sounds with her mandibles. "Captain, we have a contact," announced Lieutenant Kiravel, her 6 eyes focused on her instrument panel. It just appeared out of nowhere about 2,000 kilometers off our starboard side. Velmark nearly spit out his drink. Ships didn't just appear in empty space. They came out of hyperspace with bright flashes and energy discharges that could be detected from light years away. "What do you mean, appeared?" "I mean it wasn't there. And then it was there. No hyperspace signature. No engine trail. No warning. It's like someone just turned off an invisibility cloak." Velmark hurried to the main view screen and felt his 4 hearts skip a beat. The ship floating beside his convoy was unlike anything he had ever seen. It was sleek and smooth, with curves that seemed to flow like water frozen in time. The hull was a strange silver color that shifted and changed as starlight hit it from different angles. Looking at it directly made his eyes water and his head hurt slightly. "Size?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "About the same length as our ship, but much thinner. I'm not reading any obvious weapons, but honestly, Captain, I'm not sure our sensors can properly scan this thing. The readings keep changing." Velmark's species had survived for millions of years by being cautious around unknown threats. Every instinct told him to run, but his convoy was too slow to outrun anything that could appear and disappear at will. Better to find out what they wanted. "Unknown vessel. This is Captain Velmark of the merchant convoy Prophet's Edge. Identify yourself and state your intentions," he transmitted on the standard galactic communication frequency. The response came back immediately, in perfect galactic. Standard with no accent or translation errors. The voice was calm, friendly, and somehow unmistakably alien in a way that made Velmark's skin crawl. "Greetings, Captain Velmark. I am Commander Park Minho of the United Earthship Harmony. We have been observing your convoy and wish to engage in peaceful dialogue." The bridge went completely silent. Every crew member stopped what they were doing and stared at their captain. Velmark's mandibles began clicking rapidly, a sign of extreme nervousness among his people. Did you just say human?" he stammered. "That is correct, Captain. We are representatives of the human species. We understand this may come as a surprise, given the widespread belief that we are mythological." Velmark's weapons officer, a young but experienced Kajari named Broktar, was already charging the ship's defensive systems. Their plasma cannons weren't military grade, but they could punch holes through most pirate vessels. He was just about to lock onto the strange ship when everything went wrong. Every screen on the bridge flickered once, then displayed a simple message: "Systems temporarily disabled for your safety." The weapons powered down, the engines went quiet, even the lights dimmed to a soft emergency glow. But the life support kept running, the artificial gravity stayed normal, and nobody was hurt. Commander Park Min-ho's voice filled the bridge again, still calm and friendly. "Please do not be alarmed, Captain Velmark. We have temporarily disabled your weapons and engines to prevent any misunderstandings. Your systems will return to full functionality in exactly 30 seconds. We simply wish to demonstrate that we mean you no harm." Velmark watched his crew panic as they tried to understand what had happened. Their ship's computer was still running. All the safety systems were working perfectly. But anything that could be used as a weapon or to run away had been shut off as gently as turning off a light switch. How are you doing this?" Velmark asked, his voice barely a whisper. "We have been studying galactic technology for many years, Captain. We understand your systems quite thoroughly. We could have destroyed your ships, or damaged them, or taken control of them entirely. Instead, we chose to simply pause them, like a parent gently taking a dangerous toy away from a child. True to the promise, exactly 30 seconds later, every system came back online. Weapons ready, engines running, everything working perfectly, as if nothing had happened. But the message was clear. Whoever these humans were, they had technology so advanced that Velmark's entire convoy was helpless against them. "What do you want from us?" he asked, surprised by how calm his own voice sounded. "Simply to talk, Captain. We have been watching your people for some time, and we believe it is time to make formal contact. You are the first to meet us, and we hope you will help us begin a peaceful relationship with the rest of the galaxy." The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had never seen chaos like this. Representatives from hundreds of worlds were on their feet, shouting in dozens of different languages. Some were clicking their mandibles angrily, others were roaring through their breathing slits, and a few were making the high-pitched whistling sounds that meant they were terrified. Captain Velmark stood at the center of it all, still wearing his simple merchant uniform, looking completely out of place among the fancy diplomatic robes and military decorations. He had just finished telling his story about meeting the human ship, and the reaction was explosive. "This is ridiculous," bellowed Ambassador Kexthan from the hegemony worlds, his purple skin turning darker with rage. "A trading captain tells us fairy tale stories, and we're supposed to believe him?" "The sensor logs don't lie," Velmark replied quietly, holding up a data crystal. "Everything I've told you is recorded. The ship that appeared from nowhere, the voice that spoke perfect galactic standard, the way they shut down our systems without damaging anything." War Prime Thaxmore rose from his seat like an angry mountain. He was huge even by Kajari standards, with scars covering his dark skin from battles fought across the galaxy. His species was known for their aggressive nature and military skills, and Thaxmore had personally led armies in 12 major wars. "Impossible!" he roared, slamming his massive fist down so hard that his podium cracked. "No species could develop technology this advanced without us knowing about it. We have sensors watching every corner of the galaxy. We monitor all communication, signals, all energy signatures, all spacecraft movements." Other representatives nodded in agreement. The galactic civilization had been exploring space for thousands of years. They had mapped every star system, catalogued every planet, and made contact with every intelligent species they could find. The idea that an entire advanced civilization had been hiding right under their noses was impossible to accept. Council. Prime Thelara, elegant and composed as always, raised her silver hand for silence. Her species, the Altarians, were known for their diplomatic skills and logical thinking. "Captain Velmark, while your testimony is interesting, we must consider more reasonable explanations. Perhaps you encountered a classified military prototype or a ship using experimental cloaking technology." "But they called themselves humans," Velmark insisted. "They knew our language, our customs, even my name before I told them. They said they had been watching us." "Anyone could claim to be from a mythical species," scoffed Dr. Nixara, the old scientist who had dismissed human legends just weeks earlier. "Pirates and smugglers often use false identities to confuse their victims." Admiral Corinth sat quietly, in his section, remembering the strange structures he had discovered in the Void Sector. The elegant ships in his classified footage looked remarkably similar to what Captain Velmark was describing, but he had been ordered to keep that information secret. Council Prime Thylara was about to officially dismiss the testimony when something happened that changed everything. Every screen in the massive chamber, the main display, the individual representative monitors, even the small personal devices, suddenly flickered and came to life. The image that appeared was crystal clear and impossible to ignore. Long-range sensors at the edge of the galaxy were showing a sight that made every being in the chamber fall silent. Ships were emerging from hyperspace in perfect formation, hundreds of them, their sleek forms unmistakable even at this distance. "Computer, magnify Sector 7 Alpha," Admiral Corinth called out, his voice shaking. The image zoomed in, showing the ships in greater detail. They were identical to the vessel that Captain Velmark had described, smooth, elegant, and completely unlike anything any galactic civilization had ever built. They moved through space with a grace that seemed almost alive, maintaining perfect formation as they traveled toward the inner systems. "How many ships?" asked Council Prime Thylara, her usual composure finally cracking. 300 confirmed, reported the sensor technician, a young Thraxian whose 4 eyes were wide with amazement. "Energy signatures are unlike anything. In our database, they're not using fusion drives, antimatter engines, or any propulsion system we recognize." Admiral Corinth slowly stood up, his forearms trembling as he recognized the ships from his classified reports. The same elegant design, the same impossible technology, the same energy signatures that had appeared around those dead worlds in the Void sector. "Admiral." "Council Prime." Thylara turned to him. "Do you recognize these vessels?" Corinth looked around the chamber at hundreds of faces, some with scales, some with fur, others with skin like tree bark, all staring at him expectantly. He thought about the classified orders, the bureaucratic chains that had buried his reports, the officials who had dismissed his warnings. "Yes," he said quietly, his voice carrying clearly through the silent chamber. "I've seen ships like these before. In the Void sector, 6 months ago. I tried to warn the Council, but my reports were classified and buried." The silence that followed was deafening. Every representative was processing the same terrifying realization. They were not alone in the galaxy, and whoever these newcomers were, they possessed technology far beyond anything the established civilizations could match. "They're real," Admiral Corinth whispered, but in the perfect silence of the chamber everyone heard him clearly. "The humans are real, and they've been watching us this whole time." Ambassador Kim So-young had spent her entire career preparing for this moment, though she never imagined it would happen quite like this. Standing on the bridge of the UES Endeavour, she watched through the massive view screen as Council Station Alpha grew from a distant point of light into a sprawling complex the size of a small moon. The station was impressive, she had to admit. Hundreds of docking bays, residential sections for thousands of different alien species, and meeting halls large enough to hold representatives from across the galaxy. It was a symbol of unity and cooperation between different worlds, something humanity had been watching and admiring from the shadows for decades. Captain Lee Hyun-woo stood beside her, his hands clasped behind his back in the formal posture he adopted when he was nervous. He was younger than most starship captains, but he had earned his position through skill and steady nerves. Right now, those nerves were being tested as dozens of alien warships took positions around their small diplomatic vessel. "Ambassador, I'm receiving multiple targeting locks from the Council Defense Fleet," reported Lieutenant Commander Han Ji-min from her communications station. 17 battleships, 43 cruisers, and more fighters than I can count. They're trying to surround us." So-young nodded calmly. "Any hostile actions?" "Not yet, but their weapons are powered and ready. I'm also picking up frantic communications between their fleet commanders. They seem confused about what to do with us." Through the view screen, So-young could see the alien ships positioning themselves in what they probably thought was an intimidating formation. The vessels were bulky and heavily armored, bristling with obvious weapons and thick defensive plating. They looked like floating fortresses designed to survive brutal combat. In contrast, the Endeavour was sleek and elegant, its hull curves flowing like water. It looked more like a work of art than a warship, which was exactly the impression they wanted to give. Humans had learned long ago that first impressions mattered in diplomacy. "Captain Lee, are our defensive systems ready?" she asked quietly. "All systems are online and monitoring, Ambassador. If they attack, we can protect ourselves without harming them." "Good. Let's hope it doesn't come to that." A new voice crackled over the communications system, speaking in heavily accented Galactic standard. "Unknown human vessel, this is Admiral Corinth of the Dominion Navy. You will maintain your current position and prepare to be boarded for inspection." So-young smiled and gestured to Han Ji-min. "Open a channel, please." "This is Ambassador Kim, So-young of the United Earth ship Endeavour. Admiral Corinth, we appreciate your caution, but boarding our vessel won't be necessary. We're here on a diplomatic mission, as invited by the Galactic Council." There was a long pause before Admiral Corinth responded. "Ambassador, the Council has agreed to receive you, but security protocols must be followed. We don't know what weapons or diseases you might be carrying." "Understood, Admiral. We're transmitting our complete medical records and ship specifications now. You'll find we pose no biological threat to any known species, and our vessel carries only defensive systems. So Young had chosen her crew carefully for this mission. Everyone aboard the key Endeavour spoke multiple galactic languages and had studied alien cultures for years. They understood the fears and concerns that first contact with humans would create. As their ship approached the massive docking bay, So Young reviewed the gifts they had brought. Not gold or rare metals, but something far more valuable: information. Detailed records of every major political crisis, trade dispute and military conflict that had occurred in galactic space over the past 50 years. The aliens were about to discover that humans had been watching everything. Every secret meeting, every military buildup, every diplomatic negotiation had been observed and recorded by human scouts, who remained completely undetected. When the Endeavour finally docked with Council Station Alpha, So Young led her small diplomatic team through corridors filled with hundreds of different alien species. She had studied all of them: their biology, their psychology, their cultural customs. Some communicated through color changes in their skin, others used pheromones, and a few species thought entirely in mathematical concepts. The Great Council Chamber was exactly as she had seen it in their surveillance footage. But being there, in person, was still overwhelming. Representatives from hundreds of worlds filled the massive space, their various forms of life creating a symphony of sounds, smells, and movements. Council Prime Thylara, tall and graceful with her silver skin gleaming under the chamber lights, stood to address the gathering. "We welcome the human delegation to this historic session. Ambassador Kim So Young, you may present your credentials." So Young stepped forward, carrying a simple data crystal that contained 50 years of careful observation. "Honored representatives, we come before you not as strangers, but as neighbors who have been quietly living next door. We know your laws because we've watched you create them. We understand your customs because we've observed your ceremonies. We appreciate your achievements because we've witnessed your progress." She placed the data crystal on the central podium, where it projected holographic displays of galactic events that should have been secret, trade negotiations between rival empires, military strategies from recent wars, even private conversations between council members. The chamber fell completely silent as the implications became clear. Humanity hadn't just appeared out of nowhere. They had been there all along, watching, learning, and preparing for this moment, when they would finally reveal themselves to the galaxy. War Prime Thaxmore sat in his private command center, staring at holographic displays that showed decades of human surveillance data. His massive hands, scarred from countless battles, trembled with fury as he scrolled through file after file. The humans had recorded everything: military movements, secret weapon tests, private conversations between high-ranking officials, even personal details about his own family. 50 years, he growled to his aide, Commander Velkorth. 50 years they've been watching us like insects under a microscope. Thaxmore was old enough to remember when the Kajari Empire had been caught spying on the hegemony worlds. That incident had started a war that lasted 12 years and killed billions. In his mind, what the humans had done was far worse. They hadn't just sent a few spies. They had somehow observed entire civilizations without anyone noticing. "Sir, Ambassador Kim So Young claims they were studying us to ensure peaceful contact," Velkorth offered carefully. "Peaceful contact." Thaxmore's voice rose to a roar that made the walls shake. "They invaded our privacy. They violated our sovereignty. They treated us like animals in a zoo." Across the galaxy, similar conversations were happening in military command centers and government buildings. While some leaders were impressed by humanity's restraint and diplomatic approach, others saw the surveillance as an act of aggression that couldn't be ignored. Ambassador Kim So Young had spent 3 days in the council chambers, patiently answering questions and trying to explain humanity's intentions. She spoke calmly about their desire for friendship, their respect for galactic civilization, and their hope for peaceful cooperation. But her words fell on deaf ears among the hardline factions. "They know our weaknesses," argued Senator Krixavel from the Outer Rim territories. They've mapped our defenses, studied our tactics, identified our key leaders. This is exactly what an invasion force would do before attacking. The breaking point came when Thaxmore discovered that the humans had detailed files on his own military strategies. Secret battle plans that he had developed personally were described in perfect detail in their intelligence reports. His pride as a warrior, built over decades of victory and combat, couldn't tolerate such humiliation. If they want to play at being spies, he muttered to himself, then we'll treat them like enemy agents. The human medical ship Healing Song was traveling through neutral space when Thaxmore's strike force found it. The vessel was clearly marked with medical symbols and was transmitting peaceful intentions on all frequencies. It had carried a crew of 30 doctors and nurses who had volunteered to help treat a plague outbreak on one of the border worlds. Thaxmore's attack fleet consisted of 12 heavy cruisers, each armed with enough firepower to destroy a small moon. He had chosen his most loyal commanders, officers who would follow orders without question. The plan was simple: destroy the medical ship and claim it was carrying weapons or threatening Council territory. All ships target the human vessels. And prepare to fire, Thaxmore commanded from his flagship, the Iron Vengeance. What happened next would be talked about in military academies for generations. As soon as the Council ships powered their weapons, every system on every vessel simply stopped working. Not destroyed, not damaged, just turned off like someone had flipped a switch. Engines went silent, weapons powered down, navigation systems went dark. But life support kept running perfectly. Artificial gravity stayed normal, and emergency lighting provided enough illumination to see. The crews were completely safe, but utterly helpless. Commander Park Min-ho's voice filled every bridge simultaneously, speaking in the same calm, friendly tone that Captain Velmark had heard during first contact. "Attention, Council vessels. You have attempted to attack a medical ship in neutral space, which violates 17 different galactic treaties. We are disabling your weapons and engines to prevent further hostile actions." On his flagship, Thaxmore watched in horror as his tactical displays showed human ships materializing around his fleet. Dozens of sleek vessels appeared from nowhere, surrounding the disabled Council warships with casual ease. The humans had been watching the entire time, ready to intervene the moment violence began. "Your crews are in no danger," Park Min-ho continued. "We will restore your ships to full functionality once this situation is resolved. We defend ourselves, but we will not be the first to take life. Please stand down and return to your home ports." Back on Council Station Alpha, Admiral Corinth watched the tactical display with growing amazement. The human fleet had neutralized 12 of the Council's most powerful warships without firing a single shot. More importantly, they had done it while the ships were actively trying to attack them. "They could have destroyed them all," he whispered to his aide. "Those human ships appeared right next to our vessels. At that range, they could have cut our fleet to pieces before we knew what was happening. Instead, every Council crew member was safe. The humans had chosen to disable rather than destroy, to protect rather than punish. Even when attacked without provocation, they had shown mercy. The message was clear to everyone watching. Humanity possessed technology so advanced that the entire galactic military was helpless against them. But instead of using that advantage to conquer or control, they were choosing diplomacy and restraint. "We ask only that you listen," Park Min-ho's voice concluded. "We are not your enemies. We never wanted to be your enemies. We simply want to be your neighbors." Admiral Choi Sung-min had commanded warships for 20 years, but she had never led a fleet quite like this one. Standing on the bridge of the UES Resolution, she watched through the massive view screen as her ships took positions throughout Council space. 300 vessels, each one capable of reducing planets to ash, floated peacefully among the alien worlds like gentle giants. "Admiral, the Nexus Prime medical team is reporting excellent progress," her communications officer reported. "Dr. Lim's treatment is working better than expected." Choi nodded, watching the tactical display show her fleet's positions. Every ship was stationed near a world that needed help: medical assistance, disaster relief, or technical support. It was the largest humanitarian mission in galactic history. and it was being carried out by vessels that could have conquered the entire galaxy in a matter of weeks. The irony wasn't lost on her. The same technology that made humanity nearly invincible in battle also made them incredibly effective at saving lives. Their medical scanners could detect diseases that alien doctors couldn't even identify. Their engineering systems could repair damaged infrastructure in hours instead of months. Their energy sources could power entire cities without creating any pollution. On Nexus Prime, Dr. Lim Ye-jin was working around the clock in a temporary medical facility set up in the planet's capital city. The crystalline plague had been killing thousands of people across the Outer Rim territories for 3 years. The best alien doctors had tried everything they could think of, but the disease kept spreading. Dr. Lim's team had solved the problem in 4 days. The plague isn't actually a disease, she explained to the amazed Nexus Prime medical staff. It's a reaction to microscopic crystal particles in your atmosphere. Your bodies are trying to protect themselves, but the defense mechanism is causing more harm than the original threat. The treatment was surprisingly simple once they understood the real cause. A combination of medicines that humans had developed decades ago, adjusted for alien biology, could cure the plague completely. Within a week, thousands of dying patients were walking out of hospitals healthy and grateful. Meanwhile, on Kepler Station, engineer Park Tae-hyung was helping repair the life support systems that kept 50,000 aliens alive in the cold vacuum of space. The station's old equipment had been failing for months, and everyone knew it was only a matter of time before catastrophic failure killed everyone aboard. "Your technology is amazing," gasped Chief Engineer Velnarok, watching Park work with tools that seemed to bend the laws of physics. "That fusion reactor has been broken for 6 months. Our best engineers said it couldn't be fixed." Park smiled as he sealed the final repairs. "Sometimes you just need a different perspective. Your design is actually very clever. We just approached the problem from a different angle." What impressed the aliens most wasn't just the advanced technology, but the way humans used it. Every human ship in the fleet had medical bays that were open to anyone who needed help. Human engineers worked alongside alien technicians, teaching them new techniques. While learning about their methods, human scientists shared their research freely, asking for nothing in return except the chance to learn about alien cultures. Council Prime. Thylara stood in her private office, watching news reports from across the galaxy. Everywhere humans went, conditions improved. Sick people got better. Broken machines started working. Struggling colonies received the resources they needed to survive and thrive. "They could enslave us all," she whispered to her aide, Councillor Murthak. "With their technology, they could make us completely dependent on them. They could demand anything they wanted in exchange for their help." "But they're not," Murthak replied, equally amazed. "They're giving everything away for free. They're not even asking for trade agreements or political concessions." The demonstration was working exactly as humanity had planned. They were showing the galaxy that advanced technology didn't have to mean conquest and domination. Power could be used to heal instead of harm, to build instead of destroy, to unite instead of divide. Even the most suspicious alien leaders were beginning to understand. Humanity had spent 50 years studying galactic civilization not to find weaknesses, to exploit, but to learn how to help. They had built their fleet not to conquer worlds, but to protect them. They had developed their technology not to dominate other species, but to lift them up. The most dramatic moment came when War Prime Thaxmore had a shuttle accident while traveling between council meetings. His transport suffered a critical system failure in deep space, leaving him and his crew stranded with failing life support. The human medical ship that rescued them worked for 6 hours to save Thaxmore's life. His injuries were severe, and alien medicine couldn't have helped him, but human doctors, using techniques that seemed like magic, managed to repair the damage and bring him back from the edge of death. 3 days later, Thaxmore stood before the full Galactic Council, his massive frame supported by a walking aid. His scarred face was wet with tears as he spoke to the assembled representatives. "I was wrong," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the silent chamber. "I called them spies and invaders. I tried to start a war because I was afraid of their power. But when I was dying in that shuttle, they saved my life without asking for anything in return. He paused, wiping his eyes with one massive hand. They are not conquerors, they are not here to replace us or control us. They are what we should aspire to become, beings who use their strength to protect the weak, their knowledge to heal the sick, and their power to make the galaxy a better place for everyone. The chamber remained silent as the old warrior's words sank in. Humanity had passed the ultimate test, proving that true strength lay not in the ability to destroy, but in the choice to show mercy. 6 months had passed since the first human ships appeared at the borders of galactic space, and the universe had changed in ways nobody could have imagined. The great council chamber, which had once echoed with dismissive laughter about human myths, now buzzed with excited conversations about joint projects and shared discoveries. Ambassador Kim So-young walked slowly down the central aisle toward her assigned seat, still amazed that this moment had finally arrived. Representatives from hundreds of different worlds watched her approach, their various forms of greeting creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, and harmonic tones. Some species showed respect through color changes in their skin, others through specific postures, and a few communicated their welcome through chemical scents that her translation device converted into words. Her seat was positioned between the Thraxian delegation and the Kajari representatives, a symbolic placement that showed humanity's acceptance as equals among the galactic community. The chair itself had been specially designed to accommodate human anatomy, crafted by skilled artisans from 12 different worlds working together. Honored representatives, Council Prime Thylara announced, her silver skin gleaming under the chamber's lights. Today we welcome our newest member to the Galactic Council, Ambassador Kim So-young of Earth and the United Human Colonies. The applause that followed came in many forms. Some aliens clapped their hands or claws, others drummed their tentacles against their desks, and a few species created musical tones that blended into a beautiful harmony. So-young had studied these customs for years, but experiencing them in person still filled her with wonder. As she took her seat, So-young remembered the long journey that had brought humanity to this moment. The careful observations, the patient planning, the agonizing debates about when and how to reveal themselves. Some human leaders had wanted to wait another century, while others had argued for immediate contact. In the end, they had chosen this path, and it had led to acceptance beyond their wildest hopes. Meanwhile, in the orbital shipyards above Nexus Prime, Captain Lee Hyunwoo was shaking hands with Admiral Corinth as they reviewed the patrol schedules for the month ahead. The two officers had become unlikely friends, bonding over their shared dedication to protecting peaceful traders and explorers. Patrol Route 7 will take us through the Helix Nebula, Lee explained, pointing to a star chart displayed on the holographic table between them. My crew has experience navigating those energy fields, so we can take point on that mission. Admiral Corinth nodded, his forearms gesturing toward different sections of the map. Your ships handle those conditions much better than ours. Our vessels need heavy shielding to survive nebula passages, but yours seem to glide through them like they're swimming in water. The integration of human and alien military forces had gone more smoothly than anyone expected. Human ships brought advanced technology and incredible maneuverability, while alien vessels provided heavy firepower and proven battle tactics. Together, they were creating the most effective peacekeeping force in galactic history. Strange, Corinth mused, watching a human patrol ship dock with the station through the observation window. 6 months ago, I thought you were myths, stories told by drunk traders in border cantinas. Now I'm planning joint operations with you. Lee smiled, remembering his own amazement at first seeing the massive alien fleets. If we can surprise each other this much, imagine what else is waiting out there in unexplored space. That question was about to be answered. Dr. Yang Soo-jin stood in the main laboratory of the research vessel Discovery, surrounded by the brightest minds from dozens of different species. The joint human-alien expedition was preparing to venture beyond the mapped regions of the galaxy, searching for new worlds and new forms of life. The gravitational readings from Sector 97 are unlike anything we've seen before, reported Dr. Klixithara, a Thraxian astrophysicist whose 6 eyes could perceive light spectrums invisible to most other species. There might be entire solar systems out there using physics we don't understand yet. Yang nodded excitedly, reviewing the data on her tablet. That's exactly why we need to work together. Human sensors detect different things than yours do. Your mathematical models approach problems from angles we never considered. Separately, we might miss important discoveries. Together we can unlock secrets that no single species could find alone. The expedition fleet was a marvel of cooperation. Human exploration vessels worked alongside Kajari survey ships, Thraxian research platforms, and Altarian diplomatic cruisers. Each species brought their own strengths to the mission, creating a combined force capable of handling any challenges they might encounter. Back in the council chamber, Ambassador So Young rose to address the assembly for what she knew might be the last time before the great expedition departed. The chamber fell silent as representatives focused their attention on the human diplomat, who had changed their understanding of the universe. "Honored colleagues," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast space. "6 months ago, we revealed ourselves to you after decades of observation. We had spent so long watching from the shadows, learning your languages, studying your cultures, trying to understand what kind of neighbors you would be." She paused, looking around at the hundreds of different faces watching her. "What we discovered exceeded our greatest hopes. Yes, you have conflicts and disagreements just as we do, but you also have something remarkable, the ability to work together despite your differences, to find common ground across the vast diversity of life in this galaxy." The chamber remained perfectly quiet as she continued. "Now we stand at the threshold of a new age, not the age of humans or the age of any single species, but the age of cooperation. Together, we will explore regions of space that none of us could reach alone. We will solve problems that would baffle any individual civilization. We will discover wonders that will amaze us all." Outside the station, the combined fleet was already gathering. Human ships with their elegant curves flew alongside the massive angular vessels of the Dominion Navy. Sleek Thraxian scouts moved in formation with heavily armored Kajari battleships. It was a sight that would have been impossible just months earlier. "The universe is vast and full of mysteries," So Young concluded, her voice filled with excitement for the future. "If we can surprise each other so completely, imagine what other wonders await us among the stars. We are no longer separate species sharing the same galaxy. We are partners, explorers, friends. Together there is no limit to what we can discover." As the applause filled the chamber once again, So Young knew that humanity's long isolation was truly over. The age of watching from the shadows had ended. The age of exploring the cosmos together had begun, and the universe would never be the same.